Welcome everybody. Sorry we had to do such a rushed kind of handoff here, but we're going back to back, 30 minutes at a time. So if there ends up being questions at the end, I'm going to try to get through a lot of slides as fast as I can. Feel free to come up to me afterwards or come over to our booth in 522, and we'll be happy to dive into things a little bit deeper. I'm Michael Leone. I'm the Director of Commercial AR/VR for Lenovo. Most of you probably are aware of Lenovo from our ThinkPads and some of our servers and a lot of other technology, and might not be as aware of what we've been doing in the AR/VR space for the last several years. We've been doing quite a lot, most of it being on the consumer side of the fence and a little bit less on the commercial side. What we've been announcing and what we have here out in our booth is our efforts to really focus on the enterprise. And for us, the enterprise is starting really with the Fortune 1000 for us, or our largest global accounts. And then we'll scale down as we go, and we'll talk a little bit about why we're doing that as we go today. But this has been kind of a dark project that we've been working on for on and off about the last 2 years, really pushing hard the last year and a half. And the reason why we even started working on this solution that we're going to talk about is really to help address a lot of the challenges that we're going to talk about today in the enterprise. Before I joined Lenovo about 2 years ago, I worked at a AR startup that was doing kind of 3D scanning, point cloud generation, dealing with some of the stuff that's a little bit more common now than it was 3.5, 4 years ago. And one of the things that I got to experience back then was talking to companies like Caterpillar and Schneider Electric and others, and understanding what they were starting to do with AR/VR, what they were thinking about doing with point clouds back then, which is now actually happening, and people are taking advantage of it, including in the last presentation they talked about it. And so for me, when I started talking with Lenovo about what their plans were, it was really interesting because Lenovo is typically known as a hardware manufacturer, probably first and foremost to everybody. But there's been a big push over the last 2 years or so to extend into software and into solution-led activities around emerging technologies like AR/VR, like IoT, like some of our things in our smart office program. So Lenovo views these new technologies as a way to kind of move into the future and really make sure that Lenovo is thought of equally on the software and solution side as you are as a hardware preferred vendor. So some of the things we're going to cover here, I'm going to touch on a little bit on some of the applications. I really want to dive a little bit faster into what we're doing to help address that, and then really what we're doing to dog food it internally at Lenovo to test this and validate what we're doing while we're taking it out to customers at the same time. But some of these commercial applications I'll touch because our strategy does go across AR and VR. Most everybody that's here attending knows obviously more about this than most people out there, but some of the applications out there that everyone's focusing on, for the most part, product assembly, equipment maintenance, training and education on both sides is one of the kind of generic use cases that really goes across verticals, and it also goes across AR and VR kind of equally, as we'll see. These are all kind of areas that we're focusing on, and you'll see with our approach why we're able to kind of go after a lot of different things from a horizontal perspective instead of building a siloed vertical approach. Some of the things that we've learned as we've been developing this strategy and these products over the last couple of years is around workforce productivity. A lot of these statistics have come up earlier today in a lot of the other keynotes, but however you slice it, wherever the data comes from, you're identifying a couple of gaps that are out there around the aging workforce and about what to do about that, about how to capture knowledge that's in people's heads and be able to share it with all new workers that are coming through. And then also in the age of millennials joining the workforce, how to bring technology into the jobs for them in order to get them interested in terms of coming into these new jobs and make it something that's fun and interesting to them. So having state-of-the-art technology is going to be a critical piece of that from a training perspective, and then as well as just a regular everyday part of doing their jobs. with all those use cases and with the environment that was established there's a lot of challenges. And these aren't all of them by any means, but these are some of the main challenges that we've seen as we've talked to our global accounts. Many of you come from some of the companies that we work with already today. But these challenges are kind of end-to-end, and as we'll see, that we're trying to address each of these challenges and what we're doing and what we're bringing to the market. These challenges apply to training, they apply to all the different kind of use cases that we just touched on. But as you'll see, I mean, so an end-to-end solution is a challenge. What we mean by that is some companies might have a team of about 5 people to go and generate and work on some of these different use cases and have Unity developers and other kind of skill set. Other companies don't have any resources to work on this at all. And so working with a partner and having an end-to-end solution from the content creation side of it all the way through to deployment has not really been something that's existed thus far in the market. And that's been one of the bigger challenges, is that you have to end up knowing all the different vendors in the space. You have to get relationships with them, understand the different technologies, the pros and cons of the different approaches to figure out how to make an overall solution. And so that's one of the biggest challenges, if not the biggest, that's been in the market over the last 3 or 4 years. Scalability is a big piece of that too, and we're really lack thereof. Having a solution that only runs in a particular environment, so maybe it runs only in a cloud environment, but as you get into POCs and pilots and you want to deploy, and all of a sudden, if you can't run in an on-prem environment for, let's say that there's IP or there's different types of CAD models that have something a company would never release to the public. If you can't run in an environment like that, it's going to be a big challenge. And this, at the same time, if you've only done smaller projects around POCs and proof of concepts where you have 10 to 20 users and you've never really scaled out the system and you've never really run it in an environment that can scale ahead of time, that's also going to be a challenge from a deployment standpoint. From a platform SDK versus a siloed application standpoint, what we mean by this is, do you have a solution and are you thinking about things that are going to allow you to kind of future-proof and grow and handle some of the use cases, or are you going to make one-by-one vertical application for each of the different problems that you're facing? So some companies we talk to have identified 10, 20, 30 different use cases. If those use cases are all using different hardware, let's say one of them might be a good fit for someone like V6, another one might be a good fit for a phone, another one might be a good fit for what we've developed on our A6 hardware. You don't necessarily want to work and have to go have your developers learn 3 or 4 or 5 different SDK environments and become experts at all of them. That's going to slow things down. Is there a way to take more of a platform or a horizontal approach to things? And so that's one of the other big challenges, is you only have so much time. Where do you want to spend your resources, time, and effort when looking at this? From a cross-technology standpoint, it's also important, like we were talking about, and for those of you that saw the last presenter, AR and VR, you want to be able to deal with technologies that can go across both. So if you have workflows and tools and things that only work in one and not the other, that's less ideal. So the more you can have technologies and the more you can reuse models and 3D assets across both, obviously the better. And that's been one of the bigger challenges over time as well. Customization of apps. So there's a lot of different, let's say you use Remote Expert as a use case or Remote Assist. A lot of companies sell an off-the-shelf, canned application around Remote Expert or Remote Assist. If you can't customize that very easily for your environment, then you're really asking your customers to change their behavior around the features that you support in an application, instead of being able to really customize it for their needs. So from a training perspective and looking at technology around training and education, if you can only handle things in one scenario or a very limited set of customizations, you're not really necessarily helping out customers as much as you possibly could. And from a customer-facing standpoint, if you're building applications for your internal users or your customers, or even if you're going to turn around and maybe sell something to your own customers as part of a customer service offering, the ability to customize is going to be critical. And a lot of solutions on the market right now, you don't have that customization capability. Device fragmentation and support, also important. If you can't support phones and mono and binocular style head-worn and different types of AR glasses, that's going to end up being a challenge, because the larger customers that we've talked to, they want to view AR and VR as AR and VR hardware as tools in a tool belt, right? So in some cases, a phone makes the best sense for solving a particular problem. In other cases, maybe the HoloLens is a great fit. But if you're using HoloLens in a situation where someone needs to wear the glasses for 3 hours at a time, it's not going to be a good fit, right? And so the market in general is being asked to kind of use hardware and software that's kind of not been the best fit. We've had many, many different conversations with customers that say, we're using X vendor for hardware because there's not another really good option, so we're using it because we kind of have to. And so this fragmentation exists, and so ultimately a solution would be better if you could support a lot of different versions of hardware. And then finally, from a deployment standpoint, we have many customers that have talked to us about working on a successful POC or a pilot for 6 months or a year, and then trying to get it to roll out into bigger deployment. And all of a sudden, the IT department comes along and kind of slows things down and brings up security and a lot of other challenges and device certifications and things that the team might not have thought about in the beginning. And so having the ability to deploy in a lot of these different environments is going to be one of the things that's also very important. It's been a huge challenge. And that means public cloud, private cloud, on-prem, all the different combinations of whatever a customer might need. So one of the things that we've been working on, like I said, for about 1.5 years is ThinkReality. So this is the new brand of what's addressing everything commercial AR and VR for Lenovo. So we'll talk here, I think if the video works, we will see.
Industry is at the dawn of a new age in immersive computing. Technology is challenging the physical world. The way we interact with our environment is changing. Work is transforming. We are enabling this third wave. Our advanced AR software tools empower engineers to create applications across industries to solve problems in ways that were previously unimaginable. And our next generation devices, combined with this software platform, are making this transformation happen in inconceivable ways. Are you ready to transform?
So that quick video highlights a little bit more on the hardware side of things. So yes, we have developed the first of what will be 2 AR glasses that we're working on. And we've developed them from scratch to address what we feel is a gap in the market with a certain kind of capability and a certain offering. But one of the things that hopefully you noticed as well is that we mentioned a lot about a software platform. So for us, as strange as it sounds to some people that know Lenovo, this is a solution-led offering. It's a software-first offering. And as we'll see, we have our own glasses, yes, but we also support the HoloLens, and we support other partners like Vuzix and others, and we support Android phones, because we want to be able to be a platform that can address a lot of those challenges that we talked about. And one of them was device fragmentation, being able to work in these different environments and support different hardware. Basically, take whatever AR hardware solves the problem. And if it's a phone, that's great. If it's our glasses, that's fine. We care more about helping the customers solve their end-to-end problem and get into mass deployments than we do about selling a piece of hardware and then walking away saying good luck on your project, which is kind of where things have been for the last 3 or 4 years. So let's show another little quick video that talks a little bit about what we have.
Hi, I'm an admin for Widgets Inc. Here's a quick tour of how my company uses the Lenovo software platform portal to manage our AR and VR devices, as well as develop applications for them with the ThinkReality platform. From the dashboard, I see a snapshot of my whole organization, devices, users, and apps. At a glance, I can see the number of invited users, the devices that are active, the apps deployed, and even the size and types of assets used in our AR/VR applications. It's easy to get my team started by going to the user manager and inviting new users to the portal, where I can assign them specific roles. Of course, I can update their user info and change their role when needed. Now, I'll jump into the device manager. Clicking on the plus lets me easily add new devices as our deployment grows. This table shows all the devices in my system, Lenovo Sky Blue, as well as third-party devices from Android and Windows. New ones are pending, until they call home with their activation key and securely authenticate to the system. From here, I can see details about my devices and even configure their settings from anywhere I can connect online. The Dev Portal is where our developers go to create our AR and VR applications with the necessary tools, SDKs, and application keys from the ThinkReality platform. This area is updated regularly as the ThinkReality platform expands and grows. The Asset Manager is where developers store resources used in their applications, allowing them to use the ThinkReality SDK to build rich apps that can run on headsets from Lenovo and our partners Microsoft, Oculus, and others. To manage those apps, I'll go into the App Manager. As our software teams complete the apps they are developing, they can add them to the platform by filling in the app's details and uploading it into the system. Those details are shown when I select an app to view its information. When I'm ready to deploy, I select the apps I want and then choose the devices or groups of devices I want to send them to with one click. The Lenovo software platform communicates securely with the devices and the apps get installed automatically. If I need to create new groups, I'll go to the Groups Manager. Here's a list of groups already created in the system. The Details view will show me the members of my existing groups and allows me to add or remove members as needed. A few last things. Since we are a global company, we love that our cloud portal supports the languages our employees use around the world. And over time, we use this same portal to manage our IoT devices, our collaboration solutions, and access other amazing software products from Lenovo.
So there's a lot to digest there. So we'll kind of walk through at a high level and describe what is included in what we just saw. So from a scalable software platform, we also have the modern hardware with our A6 glasses and expert services. So one of the things that you'll hear us talk a lot about from a solution standpoint is we do have resources inside the company that can go on site to help from an end-to-end perspective. Now that help might be upfront strategy and how to plan out what the what your AR strategy should be, what are some of the use cases, help do this discovery up front. But it could also be back-end services. How do I integrate back into Oracle? How do I integrate back into SAP? How do I make sure that I've got the right level of security in the system? Working with your IT department to identify these security risks, get devices certified ahead of time, have those conversations as early in the process as you can so that you don't hit a roadblock on the project later on. So again, software platform, hardware, and services, and as we'll see, some partners are a key part of the offering as well. We won't get into all the details, but the software platform comprises an SDK. It has workflow builder capabilities. A big part of it is a cloud infrastructure that can run in different environments. So whether it's AWS, whether it's Azure, whether it's Ali Cloud, whether it's private, on-prem. Someone earlier talked about a server in a closet. Any of those different environments, we want to be able to deploy in those different environments. And so it's been architected to fit into those different environments. We've done all this to address a lot of those concerns that we talked about earlier. So as we've built the product and talked with our customers, we're trying to address each of those needs as they've raised them over time. Another big thing you'll hear us talk about is a platform being agnostic across the board. So environmentally agnostic in terms of where it can run. So in terms of the connectivity, some of the requirements is, maybe you're off as a remote field worker and you're away from the network. You want to be able to have an application that runs there and also then can activate and then send data and things like that when you get back into a networked environment. So being able to run in different environments. Cloud agnostic, as I mentioned earlier, private, on-prem, doesn't matter from our perspective. It's whatever the customers really want to run and deploy this environment. From a device standpoint, again, we have our own, but we also will support HoloLens, View 6, and other partners we'll be announcing soon. And it's going to be an ever-growing kind of device program that we'll have and support over time that's being led by our customers. It's really what do they want and need us to support. And then from a market perspective, we view this as very much a horizontal approach instead of a vertical approach. And as we will see, instead of making, let's say, a remote expert or remote assist application and selling it as a Lenovo branded app, we have that app, but it's given away as part of our offering. So when you license the technology from us, you get that sample app. The reason why we give it away as sample app is because it's a collection of building blocks for you to be able to use to go make those applications and reuse those building blocks faster across multiple different use cases. And so that's a different approach in the sense that it's very horizontal in nature. Many of the largest customers that we talk to have, again, 10, 20, 30 different use cases. If you're building just one use case for Remote Expert, that's okay, but most of the customers we talk to have many more than just one use case. And so having a Remote Expert capability that can be repurposed and maybe 70% of that application can be used in 2 or 3 different versions of that app, both maybe for your internal use and then sometimes even for customers. That's the advantage and the difference in what we're talking about. It's architected from day one to be able to support that kind of environment. On the VR side of things, we're not getting too much into details and we don't have any demos out there yet, but look for announcements over the coming months. VR is a big part of what we're doing and what we're taking to market as well. And we kind of view things from a hardware perspective in 3 different areas: an all-in-one VR, a commercial, more generic VR solution, and then a professional or pro VR. So you will be seeing products taken to market from Lenovo across all those different areas, built specifically for these enterprise use cases, having the services and support behind those products like you would expect from a commercial product compared to a consumer product where you're going to obviously not have any of those things that kind of go with it. So the other thing about the VR strategy that we're doing is we're tying it back into that same software platform. So from a workflow perspective, from device management, application provisioning, we've thought about all those things and they apply to both AR and VR. So for example, if you want to deploy 500 all-in-one VR headsets, you should be able to deploy that. You should be able to upgrade them from whether it's firmware applications from the same console that we saw just as easily as it would be AR glasses. So from our perspective, it's really about trying to give the tools to the enterprise to let them manage these devices in their networks the way that they want to. We talked a little bit about this Remote Expert capability. The highlight here is really that everything's customizable. That's really the driving force here. So if you think about this as a collection of Lego bricks, those Lego bricks can be used across many different AR applications. So for example, a barcode reader can be used in a lot of different applications, not just a Remote Expert type of application. So we have that implemented as that Lego brick, as that microservice that can be used by developers to go create their own versions of an application. And if you don't have the right skill set, maybe you've got a bunch of really good ideas, but your developers are busy or you don't have a big in-house set of developers, that's where our own services team comes into play. And we also have a strong support system within our ecosystem of partners. So we've been vetting a lot of ISVs that are out there, a lot of smaller ISVs that have been working with some big brand companies to become subject matter experts at our SDK, at our platform, to be able to help implement these training use cases, these education use cases, whether it uses Remote Expert or not. And so they'll be a big part of what we're doing as we go forward. So given all of that, what are we doing inside to help test this? So we're not just working with customers on this. We're actively working on a lot of proof of concepts and pilots with our customers. We're also dog fooding this internally. So one example is our internal warehouse in North Carolina, where we get break-fix type of situations coming in. And this could be anything from a Chromebook coming back or different consumer products that come back in that need to be assessed from a warranty and a break-fix perspective. One of the things that we did as we were looking out at the company to find ways to improve and test out the ROI was places where we could focus on efficiency and where the platform would kind of fit in an easy way. And this use case, we started talking with this team that's responsible for this as a laptop, let's say, comes in and goes through a cycle to go through and determine whether or not it's going to be fixed or warrantied or replaced. Each station that it goes through takes a certain amount of time. And so the goal was to be able to get involved with this team and reduce the amount of time, reduce the amount of errors, and improve efficiency as they were going through this step-by-step approach. And that's one of the things that we've been able to successfully do with this team internally so far. Another team on the manufacturing side of the house, halfway around the world, came to us with the challenge of, this is a team that puts together a lot of the rack-based systems from a solution perspective. And so they'll have to go through and enable these very complicated rack systems that are highly customizable on a customer-by-customer basis. And so today, what they've had to do, or in the past historically, they used paper and pencil to kind of go through and look at the different order instructions. They then migrated to digital with a phone-based app. But you can see here, you have someone that's trying to work with their hands, but they're having to hold a phone at the same time. They're also dealing with the small display and can't always read the instructions on what they're supposed to be doing, especially if it's a newer employee. They'll have challenges in that situation. So we've been able to take our platform, again, because it is customizable, and reuse a lot of the same components that we saw from the other warehousing application and reuse the same kind of things here from a manufacturing use case perspective. And then finally, within our research organization, we've been working over the last several years to test out a lot of our computer vision algorithms and a lot of our different workflow elements with large airplane and aircraft companies in China to test out the object recognition capabilities, the SLAM capabilities. And we also wanted to test out and validate, as we were developing the ThinkReality platform, is the ROI really there? Like, how can we go in and prove to these large companies from day one, from a research perspective, that it actually is valuable? And we were able to do that by focusing on getting 30% less time on the inspections as planes were coming back in and reducing errors by 50%. And so this was another early project that we did internally to prove that, yes, we're on the right track. We can use it with some of our biggest customers, but we could also use it internally in many different areas. And so finally, to wrap it up, wanted to find out a little bit more where everybody else is in their journey. Not to necessarily talk now because we're running out of time, but to come by our booth and let us know if you have interest in learning more about a platform and how it can be used to help address all these different use cases. If you look specifically at training, for example, the way we view training is it can be used in a lot of different situations. If we go back and look at the warehousing situation, that's a very high turnover type of role inside of Lenovo. Sometimes those employees might be there for 6 months and then leave, and then there's a whole other set of people that are coming in. So from a training perspective, yes, that's going to be something that a worker is going to be using in their daily activity, but because the turnover rate is so high, it's now a training application as well. So you don't necessarily want to have somebody shadowing somebody. It's a little bit easier to give them an application and a headset and walk them through the process, and they're getting trained at the same time. So almost from day one, they're able to ramp up that much faster. So that's another side benefit of, from a training perspective, is getting employees ramped up very, very quickly when they come on to a new position. So feel free to come over to our booth and ask more questions. But I think we can have time maybe to take 1 or 2 questions now, if anybody has anything in terms of the platform, some of the other use cases, some of the, we didn't talk too many things about customers, but at a high level, I can talk a little bit about what we're doing with some of the customers and the main use cases they have as well. Sure. Yeah, we got one down front.
Oh, down front.
Yeah, you're close enough.
There we are. So early on, again, thanks. William Harding, Medtronic, device manufacturing, medical devices, largest in the world. That's what they tell us. So early on, you mentioned things like as they're implementing solutions, you talked about encountering problems with like IT and other organizations, and additional regulatory quality and stuff like this. So if I were to look at your solution, and I think, okay, it's great on surface, assessment, adoption, but what is your team doing? Like I hear the IT portion, when I think of stakeholder involvement or innovative diffusion, how you really pull people in to say assessment, adoption, deployment, integration, sustainability into life. Is your organization able to offer that full picture, and are you able to properly vet or bring in the appropriate stakeholders? Because I think that IT problem wouldn't have been a problem if it did.
Yeah, I would say generically, yes. I mean, that's the point. So our engagement from a services perspective, it's really on a customer by customer basis. But the idea is to identify those challenges with the customer. Because one of the things that we found is that there's an emerging technologies group or an innovation team in some of these large companies. And what you're really trying to do is help them succeed. And sometimes what they're not necessarily doing is thinking ahead of time about these IT challenges and other stuff. So sometimes it's really starting that conversation, helping them identify it. And then the one side benefit that you get with Lenovo is the great IT relationship that we already have from selling the servers and the laptops and everything else and the security. So having a conversation with us, with the procurement team, with the IT team kind of together is something that's a little bit unique that you might not be able to get from maybe a startup or another player in the industry. And so we might not be able to address every one of the regulatory things that you're talking about, but we would certainly like to start having that conversation, learn about it, and then if it's a matter of guidance and help, then certainly that's what the services team would be able to work on with. Anyone else? Okay. Thank you very much.